Have you ever had someone go from being completely engaged to acting like you don't exist? One day they're talking, laughing, making plans. The next, nothing. No calls, no replies, just silence. But what if I told you that when someone starts ignoring you, it's not a coincidence, it's a choice. They won't explain it, they won't confront you. Instead, they'll just disappear, leaving you wondering what went wrong. Yes, I'm talking about the kind of distance that feels personal, but isn't. Some people vanish because they no longer need anything from you. Others pull away because your growth makes them uncomfortable. And some, because they were never genuinely invested to begin with. But here's the truth. You don't need to chase, beg, or demand an explanation. The real power lies in understanding why it happens and refusing to take it personally. So, why do people suddenly cut you off? And what does it really mean? Stay until the end, because the last one will change the way you see everything. But before we dive in, pay attention to this story, which will help you better understand the wisdom in this material. The story of Ethan. Ethan was the kind of person everyone wanted to be around. Friendly, reliable, always ready to help. But one day, something changed. His messages went unanswered. The friends who once sought him out grew distant. Conversations that used to be warm now felt cold and forced. At first he thought, maybe they're just busy. But deep inside, a question haunted him. Why are they ignoring me? Frustrated, Ethan visited his old mentor, Mr. Harris, a retired psychologist known for his wisdom. "Sir," Ethan sighed, "I don't understand. People who once valued me now act like I don't exist. What did I do wrong?" Mr. Harris smiled and handed Ethan a candle and a matchstick. "Light this candle," he said. Ethan struck the match, and soon the candle's flame flickered in the dim room. "Now," Mr. Harris continued, "bring it close to this open window." Ethan did as told, and within seconds a gust of wind blew the flame out. Mr. Harris leaned back. "That, my boy, is why people ignore you." Ethan frowned. "I don't understand." Mr. Harris chuckled. "A small flame only stays lit when it's protected. But when it burns too bright, it invites the wind." Ethan sat in silence as realization hit him. People don't always ignore you because they dislike you. Sometimes they ignore you because your growth makes them uncomfortable. You were once on their level, predictable, familiar. But when you evolve, improve, or outgrow them, they start feeling small in your presence. Instead of growing with you, they distance themselves. That night, Ethan made a decision. He stopped chasing explanations. He stopped shrinking himself to fit in. He stopped feeling bad for outgrowing people who chose to stay the same. And just like that, he found peace in being ignored. Because he realized he wasn't being rejected, he was simply rising. People don't always ignore you because you did something wrong. They ignore you because your growth reminds them of their own stagnation. A candle that burns too bright will always make the wind restless. So don't dim your light just to stay visible to those who refuse to shine. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on the latest content. Let's begin. Number 1. They're testing your reaction. Let's talk about a subtle but manipulative tactic people use. They ignore you just to see how you'll react. One day, they're engaged, responsive, and everything seems fine. The next, silence. No replies, no calls, just a cold, distant energy. But here's the thing. This isn't always about losing interest. Sometimes it's a test. Here's the truth. Ignoring you might be their way of seeing if you'll chase after them. They want to know how much you care, how much effort you'll put in, and most importantly, how much control they have over you. If you start double texting, over-explaining, or asking what's wrong, they win. You've just proven that their absence affects you. And once they know that, they have leverage. Think of it like a tug-of-war rope. Imagine a tug-of-war game. The moment they drop the rope, ignore you, they're waiting to see if you'll pull harder, chase them. But what happens if you don't? The game ends. That's the power of not reacting. If they ignored you to test your response and you give them nothing, they lose control. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. He who needs least from others is the most powerful. Real strength isn't in proving you care. It's in not needing external validation to feel secure. When you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, and stop proving your worth, you become untouchable. A while back, I noticed a strange pattern with someone I considered close. Whenever I pulled back slightly, got busy, focused on my own goals, they would suddenly act cold. No replies, no effort. At first I assumed they were just busy, but then I tested something. I didn't chase, no extra texts, no, "Hey, is something wrong?" Just silence. And you know what happened? They came back. After a few days, suddenly, they were interested again, friendly, engaging. It was like nothing had happened. That's when I realized this wasn't about them losing interest. It was a test to see if I'd beg for their attention. And because I didn't, they lost the upper hand. How to handle this? First, recognize the pattern. If someone repeatedly pulls away and expects you to chase, it's not an accident, it's a game. Second, don't take the bait. If they ignore you to get a reaction, give them nothing. And finally, remember your worth. The right people won't need to manipulate you into proving you care. They'll already know. At the end of the day, attention should be mutual, not tested. If someone is playing games, let them. Just don't play along. Number 2, they no longer benefit from you. Let's talk about one of the most frustrating experiences, when people suddenly start ignoring you. One day, they're warm, engaging, and making plans. The next, silence. No calls, no replies, just a cold distance that wasn't there before. And you sit there wondering, what did I do wrong? Here's the hard truth. Some people were never really there for you. They were there for what you could offer. Maybe it was your support, your connections, your generosity, or even just the way you made them feel. But the moment they no longer benefit from you, they disappear. Think of it like a power outlet. People who only stick around for their own gain are like devices plugged into a power outlet. As long as they're charging, getting what they need, they stay connected. But the moment they're fully charged or find a better outlet, they unplug and leave. That's why some people vanish without warning. They never valued you, just the energy they could drain from you. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus once said, "Attach yourself to what is true, not to those who are temporary." That's the key. Stop attaching your worth to people who are only passing through. The right people won't disappear when they no longer need something from you. They stay because they value you, not just what you provide. I remember a time when someone in my life seemed genuinely interested in me. They were always reaching out, always friendly. But looking back, every interaction had a pattern. They needed something: advice, a favor, emotional support. And I gave. because I believed in being there for people. But one day, I decided to pull back. Not in a rude way, just to see if they'd reach out without needing something. And guess what? They vanished. No more calls, no more messages. That's when I realized they were never really my friend. They were just using me as a convenience. And the moment I stopped giving, they had no reason to stay. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize the signs. If someone is only around when they need something, pay attention. Second, stop chasing people who leave. If they disappear when you stop providing, let them go. And finally, invest in real connections. True relationships aren't built on transactions, they're built on mutual respect and care. At the end of the day, some people will leave when they no longer benefit from you. Don't take it personally, take it as a lesson, because the ones who stay, they're the ones who were meant to. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3, they're influenced by others. Let's talk about something frustrating yet revealing. When someone starts acting differently toward you, not because of anything you did, but because of what they've been told. One day, they're warm and friendly. The next, cold, distant, and uninterested. And you're left wondering, what changed? Here's the truth. A weak-minded person can be turned against you by gossip or external influence. Some people don't form their own opinions, they let others think for them. Instead of asking you for clarity, they listen to whispers, rumors, and outside judgments. And once those seeds of doubt are planted, they start seeing you through someone else's lens, not their own. Think of it like a leaf in the wind. A strong tree stays rooted, no matter how hard the wind blows. But a weak leaf, it gets carried in any direction. People who are easily influenced are the same way. They don't have a solid foundation of their own, so they sway wherever external forces push them. If someone can be convinced to turn against you without questioning the source, they were never truly reliable to begin with. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. A mind that can be easily swayed was never truly yours to begin with. People with real integrity seek truth, not rumors. If someone can be turned against you that easily, consider it a lesson, not a loss. I remember a time when a close friend suddenly became distant. No explanation, no argument, just a noticeable shift. At first I thought they were just busy, but then I heard through someone else that they had been told something false about me. Instead of coming to me for clarity, they simply believed it. I had two choices: chase them down and explain myself, or let them show their true nature. So I chose the latter. I didn't try to correct the rumors, didn't beg them to see the truth. And you know what happened? Months later, they reached out, realizing the person who fed them lies had done the same to others. By then, I had already moved on, because the truth is, anyone who can be easily manipulated against you was never really on your side. How to handle this? First, don't defend yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. If they don't value the truth enough to ask, they don't deserve an explanation. Second, let people reveal their loyalty. A real friend won't let gossip dictate their perception of you. And finally, be thankful. If someone is weak enough to be swayed, they were never a solid part of your life to begin with. At the end of the day, you don't lose real people, you just lose illusions. Let the weak-minded drift away and surround yourself with those who think for themselves. Number 4, you've stopped playing by their rules. Let's talk about what happens when you stop tolerating manipulation. People who once relied on controlling you will start to pull away. At first, It might feel confusing. Someone who was once close to you suddenly becomes distant. They stop reaching out, stop including you, and may even act cold. But when you take a step back, you realize their behavior changed because yours did. Here's the truth. When you stop playing by their rules, they lose their grip on you. Some people only stay connected as long as they can dictate how you think, act, or respond. The moment you stop tolerating their guilt trips, their subtle manipulation, or their need for control, they begin to fade away. Not because you did something wrong, but because they never valued you as an equal, only as someone they could influence. Think of it like a puppet with cut strings. Imagine a puppet being controlled by strings. As long as the strings are intact, the puppeteer decides every movement. But what happens when the strings are cut? The puppet no longer moves the way they want. And instead of accepting this change, the puppeteer simply walks away, because without control, they lose interest. That's exactly how manipulators operate. The moment you stop reacting the way they expect, they pull back, not because you changed, but because they lost their power. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. The price of independence is the loss of those who wanted you dependent. True independence means standing firm in your values, even when it costs you relationships. People who truly respect you will adjust to your boundaries, but those who only valued their control over you, they'll disappear, and that's a blessing, not a loss. I remember someone in my life who constantly tried to control the way I responded to situations. If I disagreed with them, they'd guilt trip me. If I set a boundary, they'd say I was being unfair. For a long time I played along, thinking that if I just kept the peace, things would get better. But one day I stopped. I chose not to explain, not to justify, just to stand my ground. And the response? They vanished. Not a conversation, not an argument, just distance. At first it felt like a loss, but then I realized it wasn't. It was freedom. So how do you handle people like this? First, recognize the pattern. If someone only sticks around when they can control you, it's not a real connection. Second, stop justifying yourself. The moment you stop explaining and start acting, they lose their power. And finally, let them walk away. If someone only valued you when they could influence you, their absence is a sign you're moving in the right direction. At the end of the day, not everyone will celebrate your independence, but the ones who leave, they were only there for the control, not for you. Let them go and stand firm in who you are. Number 5, they feel intimidated by your growth. Let's talk about something most people don't expect. The moment you start growing, some people will distance themselves. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your progress makes them uncomfortable. They liked you as long as you stayed on their level, as long as you weren't a reminder of everything they could be but aren't willing to work for. And when they see you rising, instead of supporting you, they pull away. Here's the truth. Some people would rather lose you than confront their own insecurities. They don't hate your success. They hate what it forces them to see in themselves. Think of it like climbing a mountain. Imagine you and a friend are hiking up a steep mountain. In the beginning, you're walking side by side. The conversation is easy, the journey feels shared. But as you start pushing harder, climbing higher, they start slowing down. They complain about the difficulty, suggest turning back, or worse, they start resenting you for continuing upward. And then suddenly they stop. They say something like, "You're changing. You're not the same anymore." But what they really mean is, "I can't keep up, and instead of climbing with you, I'd rather stay behind." And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Grow and let them choose to keep up. Your growth is not an attack on anyone. It's a test of who is willing to rise with you. I had a close friend. Let's call him David. We had always been on the same path, same mindset, same routines. But then, something shifted. I started focusing on self-improvement, reading more, setting bigger goals, changing the way I thought about success. At first, David seemed supportive, even excited. "That's amazing, man. Keep going." But as I kept progressing, his energy changed. He started making jokes about it. "So now you're better than us?" Always in a playful tone, but with a sharp edge. Then, the small digs became excuses to avoid me. "Man, you're too busy for me now." And eventually I noticed something. He wasn't celebrating my growth anymore. He was looking for ways to downplay it. One day I confronted him, not in an aggressive way, just a simple, "Hey, I feel like things are different between us. What's going on?" He shrugged. "You've just changed, man." "I don't know. It's like you're trying too hard." That's when I realized I hadn't changed too much. He had stayed the same. Instead of being inspired, he was intimidated. And rather than growing, he chose to step away. How to handle this? First, don't shrink yourself. If someone can't handle your growth, that's their battle to fight, not yours. Second, pay attention to energy shifts. If someone starts distancing themselves when you level up, they were never truly rooting for you. And finally, let them go with peace. Not everyone is meant to continue the journey with you. At the end of the day, growth comes with a price, the loss of those who refuse to grow with you. But real friends, they won't just keep up, they'll push you even higher. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 6. You've exposed their true nature. Let's talk about what happens when you stop tolerating dishonesty, manipulation, or selfishness. Some people will disappear. Not because you push them away, but because they can't exist in a space where their lies no longer work. They relied on deception, half-truths, and hidden motives. And the moment you see through it, they run. Here's the truth. When you expose someone's true nature, they only have two choices: change or leave. And most people, they choose to leave. It's easier for them to walk away than to face their own flaws, their own selfishness, their own falsehoods. You didn't lose them. They lost the ability to manipulate you. Think of it like turning on the light in a dark room. Imagine walking into a room filled with shadows. Things seem fine until you flip on the light. Suddenly, you see the mess, the dust, the things that were hidden in darkness. Now, you can't unsee it. That's exactly what happens when you recognize someone's true nature. The moment the light of truth shines, those who relied on shadows can't stand it. They'll say, "You've changed." But what they really mean is, "You stopped letting me take advantage of you." And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. The truth offends only those living a lie. A person who is honest, accountable, and genuine has nothing to fear from the truth. But those who thrive on deception, they will hate it because it exposes them. I remember someone in my life who always played the victim. Every problem, every conflict, it was never their fault. And for a long time, I believed them. I defended them, gave them the benefit of the doubt. But then, little things started not adding up. Small lies, contradictions, moments where the mask slipped. So one day I did something different. I stopped blindly accepting their excuses and started asking direct questions. Their reaction? Instant defensiveness. Suddenly, I was being too harsh, over-analyzing, not the same person anymore. And then, they vanished. No real explanation, just distance. Because once I stopped playing along, they had nothing left to gain. How to handle this? First, don't regret seeing the truth. It may be painful, but it's better than living in a lie. Second, let them go. If someone disappears when they can no longer deceive you, they were never genuine in the first place. And finally, stand firm in your integrity. The right people will appreciate your honesty. The wrong ones will run from it. At the end of the day, the truth doesn't destroy real relationships. It only destroys the false ones. Let those who relied on deception vanish. You're better off without them. Number 7. It's a blessing in disguise. Let's talk about something that feels like rejection at first, but is actually a gift. When people start ignoring you. It stings, it makes you question what went wrong, and it can even make you feel unwanted. But here's the truth. Being ignored is not a loss. It's a filter. People who suddenly stop acknowledging you, who distance themselves without explanation, are simply revealing something important. They were never truly meant to stay. And instead of seeing this as something to grieve, what if you saw it for what it really is? A blessing in disguise. Think of it like a garden shedding its dead leaves. Trees don't mourn the leaves that fall in autumn. They let go to make space for new, stronger growth in the spring. That's exactly how life works. Some people are seasonal. They were never meant to grow with you long term. When they walk away or ignore you, they're making space for the right people to enter your life. And this is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Do not grieve those who walked away. Be grateful they revealed themselves. If someone can ignore your presence so easily, it means they never truly valued it. And that's not a loss. It's clarity. I once had a friend who was always around until they weren't. No argument, no fallout, just silence. At first I felt confused, even hurt. Did I do something wrong? I considered reaching out, fixing something I didn't even understand. But then I made a choice. I didn't chase. Days turned into weeks, and I realized something. I had always been the one keeping the friendship alive. When I stopped putting in effort, they didn't even notice. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't lost a real friend. I had lost an illusion of one. That silence? It was the answer I never knew I needed. How to handle this? First, shift your mindset. Being ignored is not a reflection of your worth, it's a revelation of theirs. Second, don't chase people who choose to leave. If someone's absence is that easy, their presence was never real. And finally, focus on those who stay. Real connections don't need constant proving or pursuit. They just exist, naturally and effortlessly. At the end of the day, silence is not something to fear. It's something to be grateful for. Because the ones who ignore you, they just made room for the ones who truly see you. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights.